Start the workshop, if that's okay with you all.
Sure.
All right. So we'll follow the agenda. First and foremost, and just want to talk about last meeting, some leadership issues on my part and just lack of town's process. Want to clear those issues up. Also, kind of take that moving forward. So first and foremost, created the workshop agenda for last meeting, had roll call, adjourn, had, some business on there. I just want to be clear, and this is as I learn more about the town's process and the difference between a workshop and a meeting. When we meet as in a workshop, that's where, it's an avenue where we can really have candid discussions and talk about issues, talk through it, kind of explore kind of where we need to go planning. Of course, these are always open to the public and the public is encouraged to join. In the future, as I think, and I'm sure this isn't a novel idea or new, when we have a workshop, if it's okay with you all, if we could step out from in front of the dais and if we could meet down here, we can just kind of have a less formal discussion about issues. And I think that'll help, at least for me, to make sure that, where formal business needs to occur, formal business is occurring. And again, we use workshops and the best way to move forward in our planning process. The second one, and a much larger one, at that meeting, I disclosed kind of working documents and concepts that weren't ready for this board to hear. It wasn't out of, it was a mistake, and it wasn't out of any, wasn't trying to harm anyone. It was a jumping point for the conversation that we were going to have later on in the meeting. But that was disclosed in error, and it certainly has caused some rippling distrust and kind of the public process. And again, making sure that, and that's, again, it's on me to make sure that something comes to you all when it's ready. It hadn't been fully vetted by the BOT or the public yet. But again, I was using it more as an update and tool to move forward, but it wasn't the appropriate way to go about that. And it has caused, again, some issues. So if any of you all have had issues, to you personally, I do apologize for any of that. And then lastly, as we move forward, especially, planning is, we have to think about lines first. We have our comp plan, our planning principles that we need to focus on. And we have our, obligations to the public that we're entrusted to lead and help out in the community. But I just want to make it clear, and I've only been here for about 5 weeks. I haven't been here very long, but I have worked on 10 years in very rural areas and small towns, often, with a larger MPO or a county or a council of government, where there has been friction in kind of regional planning and those partnerships. But, in working with Boulder County staff, and that's, we've been talking about this IGA, and then there'll be other, especially as we move forward with our longer range, housing goals. If we're looking to for some economic development, to try to tackle some of those issues, we really do need to approach, and I need to approach and kind of leave those biases. Not you all. I'm not saying you have biases. I have certainly worked in areas where there has been great conflict, amongst agencies. But I truly don't feel that way, and I just want to set that tone, kind of moving forward. That of course, agencies are going to disagree on things because, again, we represent different people. But I think where we can find common ground and the fact that we do have similarities and we have common goals, I think that's what we really need to pursue, and that's going to be what I try to build moving forward. So again, I hate that I've never done this before, but and I hate that was my first meeting, and this is the jump off point for the next meetings. But I just wanted to make all that clear. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free.
Thanks.
No, I just, again, I want to be upfront and, just want to move forward, so.
Within the public, you accept you can be open, but you can't be too transparent, so you gotta be public.
Sure.
So, I'll add to that. I've asked the board of trustees to help the planning commission understand what our role is in the IGA and whether we should have one at all. And I think we're still awaiting direction. My guess is we don't have a role going forward, which is fine by me because there's lots of other stuff we can be doing. But what Andrew's talking about is the IGA information in the last meeting was privileged for executive session. It just sort of slipped through the cracks and we didn't know it. So we should have talked about it, I guess. Yeah, please.
It didn't even cross my mind, and Andrew, I just appreciate that you, clearly you feel like you misstepped, and I appreciate just you owning it in such a forthright way, and yeah, so thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
Delicate politics.
yeah, it's all good.
I should think of the small town is that sometimes it's easier to get things out because, anyways, but it's a bigger agency.
All right, so with that, if you all, again, this is more, I'm not expecting any formal, decision or direction, but I do want to go through, as we discussed at the last meeting at the tail end, kind of next steps. So again, we our comprehensive plan that's been updated, and we have our housing forwards plan that just got adopted. So out of those two documents, there were a few congruent processes that we need to take, and also especially the housing futures plan, it directly quoted a lot of what came out of the comprehensive plan. So two of the, of all of the things that we need to tackle in planning, in order to move the needle just a little bit, from both of the goals and strategies from those documents. I chose workforce housing and mixed use development. And what that does is, that at least looking back at the town's planning process and discussions in the past, economic vitality is, of course, important to every community, but is obviously important to the town of Lyons, and making sure that, we have a great downtown core, and then we also develop, smartly and in a good manner, throughout our commercial corridor, all the way down to the eastern corridor. And where mixed use, where it's really successful is when it also has a housing component. Housing in your downtown, it very well serves to reinvigorate your community. It provides workers, and if you're a visitor and you come here once or twice, you're like, well, I want to move here. And you can, get, a loft or a pad over a bakery or whatever. And a lot of, your quintessential successful, not just urban areas, but downtowns, they have that kind of baked into their code at this point, and they encourage that. So that's where I saw the overlap between housing, and especially workforce housing, and mixed use development. So I just wanted to go through, and for everybody in the room on Zoom, I did this. This was not in the packet, but I just wanted to make sure everything that we talk about moving forward, I will try to pull out goals and strategies from the comprehensive plan, because again, those two plans have gone through the public process. They've been talked about by the community. So that's kind of the residual voice that at least I'll use. And of course, as we move forward, we will have public, engagement processes for each of these. But so this is just a guide, each one of these. So I'll just go over the comprehensive plan goals and strategies first. So again, what we're going to be discussing tonight and moving forward in my work plan will be the development of workforce housing strategies and code, and then also the development of really two mixed use districts, one for the downtown core and then one for the eastern corridor. So each of these I've provided you all, and they're just direct quotes and pulled directly out of our comprehensive plan and the in the housing study. I just want to, the high level goals, I think we do need to use just to kind of forge our trajectory of where we want to go. So at least for workforce housing development, this is mentioned in several sections of the comprehensive plan. But, the big concept is that we need to provide support for all in an atmosphere of trust and cooperation. And with that, we need to encourage a diversity of housing options to meet the needs of a dynamic population, expand and preserve workforce and affordable housing options. So those are kind of the two overarching principles that I'll be using. And of course, all of the policies and goals therein, I'll be using to draft the code to bring to you all and for us to have these discussions. And then on the, and my hearts, as far as the housing futures plan goes, we also have aspirational goals and, other goals within that plan that build upon the goals that were stated in the comp plan, and then also have strategies. Go ahead.
You call it the housing futures plan, is the housing futures study, right? What's that? Just came out
Yeah, the one that just came out.
from Bohan and Houston?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I thought it was planned. It might have been study, but I thought it was planned. But at any rate, so we have our numerical goals, our 2030 housing goals, our 2050 housing goals, and then kind of our overarching affordability goal. And I think that one is important again, because that one states our AMIs, but then also kind of the goal that no one living within the town of Lyons is going to be cost burdened or over 30% of their income going to their housing. So the overarching, however, all this shakes out, that's kind of at least to me, that came out a lot within that plan. And the mixed use development goals, this hits economic development, land use and the built environment. And then it also had some housing goals in there as well. But as far as those guiding principles for the comprehensive plan is build a thriving year-round economy and then manage growth and nurture our small town character. And within those, you have create an environment in which local businesses can prosper year-round, promote the efficient use of buildable land and infrastructure, provide opportunities for a balanced and fiscally and environmental sustainable mix of land uses. And that's it. And there are a lot of strategies, and I did not want to copy and paste them all, but I have provided the housing strategies are on page 147 of the comp plan. Economic development strategies are pages 133 through 134 of the comp plan, and land use strategies are on page 141. But all of those strategies align with the language of those goals. So with that, just want to open this up. We'll go over. And these are my goals for the first and second quarter code amendments. And we have a lot of code amendments, not just aspirational, but just making the code easier for developers, for someone that wants to build an ADU. There's a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, just through and you just covered.
Yeah.
This is just a recap of things that are within the
That's
comprehensive plan and the housing study. It's not necessarily something we're endorsing as a commission or you.
No. This has all been adopted. These are all adopted goals and strategies.
I didn't realize that we had adopted the 2030 housing goals and the 2050 housing goals.
And my apologies, those were accepted by the Board of Trustees. They weren't formally adopted, they were accepted. So these are accepted goals and strategies.
So what does that mean exactly? Like we decide that we need to get 73 owner occupied houses and 25 renter occupied houses. Like that's accepted as a goal for the town?
So the methodology of why we need that, why we need affordable housing is accepted.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to get too hung up on, we have to have 230 units by this. So we do have to meet our Proposition 123 goals. That's every community in Boulder County, has decided that is important. And, these goals these changes that we'll be looking to make in the code, we're not making these to get to that 230. We're looking at these to how can we push the needle a little bit to get a little bit more workforce housing, but then also revitalize, commercial corridors with mixed use.
So they're accepted to be published in a study that we paid for, but not necessarily accepted to be endorsed by the town as a goal that we're targeting. Can someone clarify?
Yeah, it's not a none of that is a set in stone mandated, accepted goal.
Okay.
What it is it's a guidance that we took from the consultant,
Mhm.
and the board of trustees agreed that it is something that we can look at and follow. But also recognizing there are some unrealistic things that are within that, but it gives us the ability to have some direction as we are pursuing the Prop 1, 2, 3 goal. Okay, so of getting more affordable housing within a 3-year plan.
Okay, just want
Does
to be
that
clear.
make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So
Okay.
they're just here to recap the study, not here to establish new goals.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, the word goals threw me off. It's housing, 230 housing recommendations or something.
But this whole document is just a recap of 2 documents.
That's it. This is just the one sheet. If you hear me talk about policy HN 2.2,
Yeah,
I don't want you to have to open up a comp plan. I try to provide any reference that I'll be, using in the future in just a way that you have it quick on.
thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, in no way are these new concepts to this.
Well, actually a comment, I think, last year we had set out to, make sure we were revisiting the comp plan as a driver for all of our discussions and efforts. And we did that sporadically, not nearly enough. I think this is a really good start. And, we keep focused on it. I think that's a good point.
All right, well, then we will start with, workforce housing. So I don't want to read verbatim here, but for this one, again, kind of overarching, paraphrasing the entire both documents. To have a balanced approach to workforce housing may be necessary for the town to adopt both workforce housing development requirements and incentives. A balance of the following tools should be considered. Most of these were strategies that you'll see on the second page of the document that I just gave you. Inclusionary zoning isn't. So kind of to go over this, at least what I would like us to start thinking about is how can we both ensure development of affordable and attainable housing in a responsible way. And then also how can we incentivize that? And I think we've already tackled a few of these with the changes at the ADU and with the changes that we're still looking to make in that code. But, as far as, if a new subdivision were to occur or if a mixed use structure was to be built, in the Eastern Corridor, how can we make sure that developers are both held to a standard, but also want to come to Lions, and build that product? And that does, if you're a large agency with a lot of money in your coffers, sometimes just the carrot works. But, for small towns with more limited assets, sometimes and you'll also find inclusionary zoning, in most other codes that you see. And we'll go through what each of these is here in a second. But this is, again, kind of a carrot and stick approach. I don't want to use that pejoratively, but just a carrot and stick approach to, again, make sure that we have developers that are enticed to build within our community, but are held to, a fair standard. So with that, again, inclusionary zoning, at its heart, what it is, if there's a new subdivision or if there's a new housing development coming in, it is a regulatory mechanism that says, okay, if you're going to build 100 units, 25% or 10%, whatever that percentage is, has to be deed restricted to be affordable or attainable housing or some mixture of that. You know, and generally, if you have that type of structure, then you also lead with the next types of tools. So, you know, if you're holding a developer to this standard, then, you know, it's just like any negotiation, you both have to give something in return. So whether that's flexible housing types and, you know, maybe we accept, you know, a duplex or a triplex or some other housing type. And that's not traditionally, you know, on the eastern corridor or something. Or, you know, you have density bonuses. So, you know, sure, you can bring in, you know, 20 market rate homes. That's fine. Unless we had inclusionary zoning. But if you deed restrict, you know, a certain percentage of these, then you can actually, it will give you more density. So you can pick up 2 or 3 more units. So that helps cover, you know, whatever development costs that are incurred, you know, in creating those affordable units. Likewise, dimensional criteria, and you see this a lot with PUDs, right? Where you want to preserve an environmentally sensitive area, so you allow development to cluster, and it doesn't meet your typical dimensional criteria. You loosen your setbacks, or you loosen your, you know, lot size requirements, or things like that. So that's another, you know, carrot option that we have. Of course, one big one is an expedited review process. And this is, again, we saw this with the ADU code changes. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make it easier to develop these within town. So instead of having to go the full CUP route, you know, now it's an administrative decision and it happens a lot faster. So, you know, that has all sorts of ramifications, positive ramifications for financing, especially the larger your projects get. Fee waivers and reductions, you know, again, these are conversations. I have no idea what this would look like, but again, this was within, you know, our accepted housing study of a mechanism that we can use to entice development. And then lastly, and this was also a part of the housing assessment, was consideration of changes to low density zoning. So a large proportion of our community is zoned R1, and that prohibits some growth. And so, you know, looking at that and really sitting down and working with the community about, and again, I want to make that very clear is, you know, when trying to figure out these, you know, it's working with the community and making sure that we have the infrastructure, we have the roads, we have the water and sewer, and we have all of these in place. And, you know, again, all things are negotiations, and especially in planning and in public service, you're only, you know, you can't make everyone happy, but we can try to do what's best for, you know, the community.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I like what you're just saying. I'm wondering if maybe that should be a bulleted item as a common tool, which is a neighborhood cooperation, collaboration.
Sure.
Something in that direction, because I think that's going to be one of the tools that perforce we need to use
Sure.
extensively.
No, I was just making space for Barney.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and the longer you all work with me, you will learn, and you'll see in my proposed schedule, I am all about community engagement. I give a couple sessions a year at different planning conferences. I like to take it outside of the boardroom, make it a little less informal, where we can and where it's appropriate. But that is certainly something that I will bake into each of these processes, is to make sure that the public is engaged and part of the planning process.
Are you looking for feedback?
Yeah, of course.
I wonder if fee waivers and reduction would be better framed as like a broader financial something. Cost reductions and financial incentives or something like that, because fee waivers, I think of that as like a type.
Sure.
But there could be a lot under that umbrella.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, these are, you can jump in at any time, you know, especially hopefully the next meeting in our workshop. I truly intend for these discussions just to be discussions. I don't want to be sitting here and speaking to you all. So anytime you want to jump in, just please jump in. So those are, again, those, all except for the inclusionary zoning, those were provided within the housing study. But again, just trying to balance that regulatory side versus the incentive side, I think is important. So as far as kind of moving forward, and again, I used to update codes to code assessments. So this is not an aggressive schedule, but in order to kind of make sure that we're setting up, quarter 3 and 4 to where we can also get work done and there's no need to draw things out longer. I think this is a pretty good schedule. So again, it's my hope that we can kind of kick these two code amendments off tonight. And then at the next meeting, we'll review the current code and then also compare comparable community codes. So there's a lot of study out there about affordable housing, workforce housing. There's a lot that, it's not applicable to the town of Lyons because, they're urban areas or they're extremely rural areas. So Alex and I are working right now to find really good examples of kind of communities across the Mountain West that have, similar issues. Recreation community close to, a highly urbanized area, and that's a niche. We're a mountain town, but we don't have a mountain, we don't have a ski resort. So we don't kind of fall under that umbrella. So we're kind of even more niched in our housing struggles. But that's kind of for that March 11th meeting. That's what we'll workshop then. March 25th, it's my hope to at least have a rough concept draft. Again, it will not be anywhere formalized. It will just be open for discussion to see kind of out of the conversations that we have about comparable or comparable community codes, kind of what planning staff sees as a way to move forward. Go ahead.
When you talk about code review and code development, so, because we've been starting to talk about our short-term rentals, ADUs. So how does that fit in, or is this like a totally different, like new code you picture creating?
Yeah, so these will be additions to our current code. So right now we don't have these strategies built in or these codes built in. So they will be code amendments just like the others, but we'll be running in tandem.
Okay.
Or in concert, because there's more than two. Go ahead.
Specifically the workforce housing development strategies, there's no, unless there's plans to team up with an existing one, there's no housing authority to administer any kind of like deed restriction administration and stuff. So I'm just wondering I assume you've considered the fact that we probably can't administer some of these ideas that are being pooled?
Sure. So right now, and again, there are a lot of ideas being explored. So I think I brought it up at the last meeting.
Yeah.
There's a DOLA grant right now. Gilpin County, their grant writer has submitted a grant through DOLA for a planning grant to just look at the feasibility of a regional multi-jurisdictional housing authority that would follow the peak to peak from Gilpin County, not really Black Hawk or Central City. They have their own situations, but kind of more rural Gilpin County. But then Netherland, the smaller communities in between here and Lyons. So that's in no way is that going to happen. This is just a grant and we haven't been awarded anything. And the town is only, a potential partner at this point. So it's really at this point, Gilpin County and Netherland, and we've been engaged in the process and are hopeful because that's an exciting option. And that would be, again, where, that would fall. So as far as timing goes, yeah, I understand that we can't really adopt a code when we don't have the administrative infrastructure yet to adopt it, but we can go through these exercises. And, I'm not so sure if we adopt inclusionary zoning. I think that's certainly something that the town administrator enforcing those deed restrictions is a whole other basket that we have to try to figure out. But, you know, again, not trying to make big changes, but little pushes of the needle here and there.
That's good, thanks.
So after the rough concept draft, I have on April 8th, a community input meeting, not a town hall. Again, first round community engagements, I really just like, you know, our workshops would really like to just be an engaging conversation to get real input about, you know, housing needs or, you know, if there's residual feedback and conflict with, you know, the housing study, to really vet and tease those out and try to figure out how to best move forward or when to best move forward with some of these principles. So that'll be, again, we'll have a rough concept draft and we'll walk through it with the community. And then it will be an open discussion about, you know, what does the community need and what does this neighborhood need? And you as business owners, what do you need? And try to pull out all of that information and put it into a really good second draft.
Commissioner Hamburg.
Oh,
So first,
Oh, sorry. Okay.
David, are you there?
Oh,
Can you hear
yeah.
us?
I'm sorry, you must
We
have
can't
cut out
hear
for a
you.
sec. Okay. So better?
Audio level.
Oh, volume up.
Okay.
Can't turn up our volume.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay, well, okay. Who's in, yeah?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We're good, yeah.
Somebody do theirs and see until I get there.
David, can you give us something?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Very loud, very clear. You're good now. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just gonna point out, Andrew, and this is where I think Megan was going with a comment earlier. The subcommittee that's working on ADUs and short-term rentals, and that Megan's leading the effort to develop a survey to send out to business owners and those that have registered to for their ADU. So anyway, so I think we just need to dovetail that effort in with this schedule here to make sure we're not crossing wires.
sure, that's great.
When you say community input, do you mind wait till the end? What is your, like, not at town hall, what is that?
Yeah, so in the past, you know, I've learned, especially with issues such as housing and transportation, your transportation.
Yes,
I'm a big fan of walk on in the transportation world. I'm a big fan of bike and walk on. I like to actually, if we're looking at a corridor, I like to actually, you know, try to be in that corridor or try to hold the meeting there.
Oh, that was my question. You always do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and the public engagement is always better, you know, in my opinion, and a lot of opinions of planners, public processes, especially in planning, in formal settings, you know.
Visual can do that. That's exactly what I did at the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
People like, visual told me at I'm sorry, that like, when we had that going on, and we had like the Halloween, we have our Halloween parade, when you come plan with an event where you know there's a lot of community
Yeah.
people who attend, you know, Kim Mitchell told me personally, go up to people and say, give me your opinion.
Sure.
You know, I don't know about this. And so, you know, you go to them, but some, I mean, they'll have booths and things like that. I mean, that's like the Hoot Nanny or something, but if you need, but sometimes even when you're there, helpful, like, so saying, tell me what you think, I need your opinion.
Sure.
Yeah, this is what's going on. Sometimes I have to, you know, so that's where I'm going with that.
Yeah, no, I've just found that a lot of the input through several master plans or corridor studies where at the last minute, you'll get this great concept from a community where you'll get this great input, but for some reason they weren't engaged very well.
You really
So,
Yeah,
the barrier is often, I just don't want to, I don't want to speak in front of a big group of people. I don't, it's just this formal setting that I don't feel comfortable. So trying to take away some of those barriers and at least in your first round community engagement, having just open conversations, just work in the room, and talking to people and speaking about issues. I think that's, at least in my successes, that's been where I've seen positive community engagement.
Mhm.
So then after community input meeting, the first draft will be presented to you all April 22nd. And then we'll of course have input. And then staff redraft and adjustments, that'll be on me, April 23rd through May 6th. And then draft number 2 would be presented to the PCDC and BOT joint meetings. Again, these aren't public hearings, these aren't formal, hey, this is what we're presenting. This is again to get your final input and then to open this up to the Board of Trustees. And then community input number 2, once everything is finalized, and we have the language from you all and the Board of Trustees. This one, typically I have had kind of that final round of public input in a more formal setting, just because you're setting the tone of, okay, this is moving into legitimate code amendment, code change. And then I don't even do the schedule after that. So final draft presentations and public hearings, first and second readings, those are all contingent on everything else happening, in proper order. At least from this point until community input number 2, I'm fairly positive that can be a schedule that we can hold to. Go ahead.
Where do you see Housing and Human Services, in here?
I would hope, in all of these meetings where we're talking about, housing or workforce housing or anything, I truly would like this to be a forum where, that entire group come and sit at the table, and we just have that open discussion. It doesn't.
I think that'd be great. I wonder if it makes sense to, add it kind of in here,
Sure.
like maybe the draft presentations.
Okay.
And I don't know, since it's workforce housing, perhaps economic vitality as well.
Sure. And that brings us to our next, especially the economic vitality would be a great benefit to the mixed use code development. So again, I don't want to read verbatim, but I will at least for this part. As if done correctly, a mixed use district can help to reactivate the redevelopment of commercial areas. Mixed use districts typically allow far greater flexibility in use and density than traditional commercial zones, while also encouraging housing development close to commercial cores. So again, traditional, I hate to say the word Euclidean, but that's where it all started, is where you bisect all of your uses and everything is regimented and you know exactly where things are going to go, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. At least where mixed use development is going now is more towards form-based coding, which is you obviously always care about what uses are coming into your town, but you set up the built environment in a way where it matches the community's vision of aesthetics and pedestrian scale. And those items are far more important than whether it's a bakery or, a barber shop or whatever. You let the market decide how to fill those buildings, but then, again, you create an incentive by having a flexible code for development that you get both good looking and, commercial development that matches, your community and matches kind of the character of your community. But in that, you get to bake in some housing as well. And again, we're seeing it all across, not just Colorado, but everywhere. This concept of live work housing is growing, where you have mixed use developments and you have offices below and you have housing above, and instead of sitting on your couch and working, you at least get to walk downstairs and you have an office. And that has picked up greatly, in the past, it seems. In the past 2 years, I've worked in about 10 communities and they've all really prioritized mixed use and live work units. So, we obviously need to do both of these, and you'll see the schedule is exactly the same. As common mixed use goals, again, we've kind of gone over these, but they're able to maintain a community's unique character while promoting economic growth. So you don't lose your soul to shopping malls. You try to really encourage good growth. You encourage redevelopment in existing commercial areas by allowing for greater flexibility. Encourage a broad range of commercial uses and diverse economy. Encourage dense commercial and residential uses to be developed in concert. Again, want to make it clear that you're also making sure that these are being developed where they need to be developed and where it's appropriate for that community. And then focus on form, scale, and neighborhood aesthetics, and not necessarily nitpicking on what that use, whether it's an office or a, general business or whatever. So those are, common goals of mixed use districts. And then you'll again, and I'll add pretty much the same notes, except for it will be the house or the other commission. But are there any questions about kind of this? Go ahead.
This is good, and, well, I was somewhat familiar, but probably for good reason, it's still a bit abstract. I'm wondering if examples would be beneficial. Something that would make it feel kind of real, real potential.
Sure.
We could use, there are a lot, real live examples, like now that the burned out buildings are excavated, that's talk about a great opportunity.
Sure.
And then also the diner bar building, another, potentially great opportunity. Or even go to another community and point out how it worked somewhere successfully, just to kind of make it feel a little more real, or
Sure.
Realize a potential, something you could envision.
Yeah, so that's the goal for March 11th, that comparable community codes. I've been walking around on Google Earth to try to find, in towns that have adopted these types of codes, to kind of walk through history on Google Maps to kind of show how these areas have been redeveloped. And that's the ultimate goal, is to provide kind of comparable codes, but then also kind of what those codes have been able to do and what that end product looks like.
So that second element there, the comparable code review, is not just words, it's.
Sure.
Thank you.
So, we'll hold these meetings, and, up until they will be workshops pretty much the entire time. And again, we'll hope that we get open dialogue from you all, whatever boards and commissions, and also the community. Cause, again, this isn't an aggressive schedule, but we certainly will want that engagement throughout the process. So. Go ahead.
Do we need to be explicit, like, as you're gathering community info, like, about ADUs as part of that? It's a subset, right, of
Sure.
workforce housing is one piece of many,
Sure.
but I'm just thinking about that.
Yeah, so as far as the concept of the workforce housing goes, that process and that code amendment is really going to be geared towards subdivision of land and development of mixed use structures. So while they do speak with each other, I guess that this code, and I might be wrong, and if we need to, bake that in, that's just fine, but at least in my head and where I was going was those larger developments and the code around what that can look like, in the town in the future. That's where I was headed, but I certainly think it's important to keep the ADUs part of that discussion.
I see Bernie on too. I think it's really important actually, because if you think about where are we gonna get a substantial number of more affordable units potentially, it's, yeah, we might have some of these developments coming, but it's also gonna be a lot of just development.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the ADUs are gonna could play a big role there.
Yeah.
What do you all think?
I'm thinking both ADUs and middle housing.
Male housing, yeah.
Middle, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's the hope, is that, and again, reading through the comp plan and the housing assessment is where can we find, that those seem to be the biggest stops, in our housing is, we've got apparently a 30-person backlog of individuals that just need a 1-bedroom apartment that live, that work in Lyons and would like to live here. And I think ADU development will really help to solve that problem. Go ahead.
I think one of the things we need to probably remind ourselves of or be explicit about as we move forward talking about workforce housing is are we talking about owner occupied units or rental units? Because if we're just talking about rental units, yeah, ADUs are possibly a big chunk of that, but that's a big chunk of one thing, not a big chunk of all the things.
Mhm.
So you can't have an owner occupied ADU. You can't sell your ADU to someone else if you own it as a primary residence. So it's not going to satisfy any owner occupied housing. So to do that, we need a development strategy. So I see this as creating a code and a framework for a strategy that will later be realized if needed, right? We won't know. We're not going to be like, oh, that's the property there. That's the one that's going to be developed. Because I just don't think that's our job. Our job is to create the space for it and create the runway for someone else to do it.
I think this is excellent. I'm totally in support of what you're doing. I just didn't want to lose sight of some balls that are already rolling because yes, we have ADUs, but there's some barriers there to their creation. So I would love to see us try to address those barriers in concert with this broader goal.
Okay.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, and I'll close with this because we need to move to our meeting. So I mean, the true goal of both of these is we're not, we have a future land use map that guides development patterns and our comp plan guides development patterns. But I think Chair Evers said it great, is we're not saying it's here, it's here, it's here. We're just providing that avenue, if it could be there and if the community can handle it being there. We want to have that infrastructure in our code ready to go. And then also encourage urban infill, because that's where, most communities and Lyons as well, redevelopment and infill of downtown to, again, build where we should instead of sprawling out. That's the ultimate goal, is to have those.
The thing that's not on this plan, and maybe it's implied, is design guidelines for development. And we have a draft set that, Commissioner Drystad put a lot of work into and really pulled from a lot of communities, and it's great. Sure. But it's also, it's a placeholder.
Sure.
And so it'd be great to either vet it and or create something that's, appropriate for Lyons.
Yeah.
Is that part of this?
Yeah, so at least 1/3, again, for mixed use development, focusing on community aesthetic and character, I would say at least 1/3 of that document will be very design restriction heavy. And again, to make sure that we are getting structures that match where we want our community to go in the future.
And we pulling from outside expertise for design guidelines?
I mean, that hasn't been something that we were going to do, but if that's, a conversation we need to have, then that would certainly be appreciated.
I'm pretty biased, but usually
Would that be
architects do that.
both commercial and residential or commercial and mixed use?
Anything, well, I shouldn't say that. It would be, commercial development, so whether that's commercial zoning or large scale residential developments. But not single family developments or even, I mean, I doubt duplexes, even quadplexes can fall within that. But that could be part of that document or that exploration is where do you draw the line?
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, well, we don't adjourn, so we can just, we can start the meeting whenever you're ready.
Let's do it. Call to order. I think first order of business is a roll call. Where do you want to walk us through that?
Chair Evers,
Here.
Vice Chair Schwartz, Commissioner Hamrick,
Present.
Commissioner Cram. Present. Commissioner Scott. Present. And Commissioner Comer.
Present.
Does that work for you all?
It's great.
And you guys can see as well.
Or you see this?
Trustee Williams ends up looking at the computer then. During board meetings.
So agenda approval, I'm not sure I know what that means. I missed the agenda building meeting, so I apologize.
Yeah, no worries, just making sure that the board approves of the agenda, that's it.
Oh, okay, what we got in front of us.
Sure.
Got it. Yes, that's fine, unless anyone takes.
I'll move for approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
Is that something we vote on?
Yes.
Okay, turn on your lights. Okay, there we go. Next order of business is audience business. And just to remind the commission that audience business is a time for listening and learning, not a time for reacting or asking. So generally speaking, we listen and allow the audience to say what they want to say or need to say, and then we move on to the next audience member until we're done. With that in mind, we can open it now to anyone who is here who would like to volunteer to go first. If you want to speak.
Okay, I'll speak very briefly. My name is Brian Donnell, 395 Vasquez. Been here for 25 years and served on the BOT. I'm going through all the documentation and trying to understand plans versus guidelines. And it seems like you guys are still having some of that confusion as well. And I'm just curious to know if everyone is marching to the same understanding plans versus guidelines, which is what it seems to be, guidelines. However, I'm looking at the information, the PCDC formal recommendation for Boulder County rezoning. I understand we're reworking the IGA, and I understand the importance of the IGA. I'm not anti-development. I've lived here and watched development around me and wonderful Lions. You know, I'm willing to share my slice of the pie. The thing that does concern me about the document that I saw from Boulder County, and I'm not sure if you're going to formally approve it or recommend approval of it to the Boulder County that it be approved. That would be your input to them. I think that's where we are. But regardless, I read through the document and coming down here, a red flag day, and we have those, and I just get so nervous living right in front of grasslands. That document mentions flood on 22 pages. It mentions wildfire as a title section for one page or for one section and never discusses it. So I think it's incumbent on this town to take that very seriously, because we have some areas that are bottlenecked with the traffic going up to existing areas before development. And please, let's just, develop responsibly. That's what I'm asking for. And so my concern with that document is it says nothing about wildfire. And if we're approving it without saying anything about it, I think that's kind of scary to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, if I may just add some clarity. So as far as the PCDC's role tonight, they will be providing a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. And then the Board of Trustees will make that formal recommendation to Boulder County Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you.
Any other audience business? In on Zoom? Seems like it. Okay, let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is adoption of minutes. We have minutes from both January 8th and January 29th. So I would welcome a motion if anyone would like to motion to adopt. Anyone?
I'll move to adopt the minutes of January 8th.
I'll second. Could we alter that motion to include January 29th as well? Would anyone
Sure.
like to motion to do that?
I'll amend my motion to include January 29th.
29th. No, it's fine. Thank you, Marty. Would you also like to second
I would
that?
like to amend my second.
Perfect. Okay, please put in.
So motion passes unanimously.
And next item is the PCDC formal recommendation for Boulder County rezoning of properties within the town's 3-mile plan. Senior planner Andrew Bowen and Matt Hipley, long range planning division manager, Boulder County Planning and Permitting. Whoever would like to go first, please. The floor is yours.
So I'll start while we're shuffling seats. So again, I just want to explain why we discussed this at the last meeting, but it was in a workshop, so we couldn't really act on that. And again, that was fault of my leadership and just not knowing that process. So it's back in front of you all, hopefully with much greater context. I have Hannah here as well, so I'll go through. So I provided within the staff packet, and I hope you all have gone through her staff report. And then also, if you had the opportunity to watch the Planning Commission, I think it provided a lot of context, both from the staff's perspective, but also, the county's, at least the Planning Commission's thought process throughout all this. And I think that context and how we're moving forward, I think is really important. So I'll just read kind of the proposal summary. So Boulder County Planning and Permitting staff have proposed a comprehensive zoning amendment to the Boulder County zoning map. This amendment, if approved by Boulder County Board of Commissioners, will result in the rezoning of higher intensity commercial, business, transitional, and general industrial zone districts within the town of Lyons as Lyons 3-mile plan. All affected parcels are proposed to be rezoned to A agricultural, which is the county's lowest intensity district. So I provided most of the properties to be affected are in the eastern corridor and the CMEX property. There is up here 36, is the church property, and it's proposed to be rezoned to agricultural as well. So as far as kind of the process summary.
Just residential.
Rural residential, yeah, rural residential.
Okay.
Rural residential, yeah. Would you mind sharing your screen?
Oh, yeah, no worries. Sorry about that. Unless I wasn't sharing. make it big enough for everyone to see. So, on September 5th, the Boulder County Commissioners adopted a moratorium. And that was on processing applications for development in higher intensity. Again, those zoning districts within the 3-mile radius of the town of Lyons. And the purpose was to make sure, for county staff to find how to move forward, and if there were better zoning districts, or a better zone district, to put those, uses or those properties in. And a large part of that is because a lot of the area to be rezoned has changed. You know, there's different flooding ramifications, 2013 floods. There's been, you know, annexations. There's been, you know, development along the eastern corridor. And so that kind of brings us to the impact of the town and kind of, and hopefully you heard this through county staff and then also the planning commission, is right now, the town and the county, we have separate development paths for parcels down there. And the county wants to ensure that they're not a competing development that could be more or less enticing to a developer to stay or to annex within the town or to develop a certain type of use. Another large reason, you know, for this change is, you know, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. That we, you know, municipalities planning and, you know, just development wise are better equipped through our zoning ordinances, through kind of what we do as agencies to handle urban growth. The county's not exactly in the business, and you can jump in anytime, but the county's really not in the business to regulate urban growth within the county or on the fringes of municipalities. So this ensures that if there is going to be intensification or redevelopment of the properties, that they will need to be annexed into the town, which then places them under, you know, our regulatory code, and, you know, hopefully through, you know, other measures that we're taking as spoken in our workshop, that, you know, we're really thinking about the urbanization of these areas. And then lastly, kind of the reason why agricultural was chosen by county staff was that that's the county's least intensive district. And it disallows, or at least doesn't serve to entice development. So right now in the county's commercial corridor or commercial zoning, a car wash or a used car lot or a use such as that could be started right now. You know, and that could potentially harm our efforts and our comprehensive plan to develop responsibly an area for mixed use or, you know, a commercial node. And we have this, you know, use that was established in the county within that node that, you know, could not ruin the field, but could, you know, certainly be like, okay, we got mixed use developed here, mixed use developed here, car wash. And it just, you know, so that was at least part of that thought process as well. And then just wanted to go over kind of the Boulder County Planning Commission, and this was a typo, my apologies. The formal docket number, if anybody wants to look it up, is docket Z 230002. So there, the Planning Commission at that meeting, they made the following motion. The Planning Commission recommends to the Board of County Commissioners approval of docket Z 230002, Lyons Area Rezoning Map Amendment, and certify the docket for action to the Board of County Commissioners, which certification includes the approved text of the docket and the official record of the docket before the Planning Commission, including staff comments and materials, public testimony, and Planning Commission action/discussion with the following additions. And so these minutes have not been adopted by the county. Just want to make that clear. But as far as the general what they came to these two conclusions were properties that are currently zoned commercial or transitional that have commercial activity on them be reconsidered for zoning designation separate from agricultural. The intent of the Lyons and Boulder County IGA is honored upon consideration. And with that, that is, again, I've been here for a little bit of time. If any holes could be filled by Hannah, or you all have any questions that I do not know the answers to, this is the time for that.
Might be able to fill a few
Sure.
holes. Thank you for having me today. Just a bit of, I think Annie had covered most of this, but I did want to reiterate sort of where we're going from here, right? Planning Commission was held, we had our duly noticed public hearing on the 21st. And that hearing notice was sent to our property owners, direct mailing to those property owners whose property would be impacted by this. And that was the third outreach that we had done to those property owners. So we have been sort of communicating with them all along the way from the beginning when the moratorium was implemented. The second of those mailings was an invitation really for us to talk one-on-one with those property owners, to learn what they're doing, sort of know what their goals are for the future. And some folks took us up on that, which was useful to the process. As was Planning Commission, I feel like there's a huge value in Planning Commission, both at the town level and at the county level, is just the ability to get some different perspectives on a question, right? And so they did ask us to explore zone districts other than agriculture for those properties currently zoned transitional or commercial that have types of uses on them. So as next steps, obviously we're here today and interested in hearing your thoughts about that direction from Planning Commission as well, along with other feedback that you might have for us. But what we're doing with that direction from Planning Commission for our next step is to do what they asked, is to look at those zone districts, to kind of look at those properties, to see what else could be a fit and kind of compare agriculture to commercial, or perhaps the other zone districts in our code would be maybe business or transitional. So we'll be providing some additional information to the Board of County Commissioners on that direction for them to consider as well. Our staff report to the Board of County Commissioners is due Thursday, so that will be available for the public to see as well. And then the Boulder County Commissioners will also hold a public hearing. That's on March 7th. That's the second of our public hearings on these types of applications. And as I understand it, we should have kind of the formal feedback from the town alliance for them to consider in advance of that meeting as well. But we do, just like with Planning Commission, encourage folks to attend that Board of County Commissioners public hearing, provide their perspective to the board, and also that this feedback comments can all be emailed directly to me if folks can't make it in person. And I will pass those comments along to the board for consideration. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So if you can't rezone those properties as agricultural, they're already currently zoned commercial or transitional, and you keep them as commercial or transitional, that affects kind of the whole plan then, right? Because they won't be transitioned.
Well, I think part of our thought process behind choosing agricultural, aside from the fact that it's consistent with the rest of the county zoning in the area, sort of the properties we're looking at are a little bit of oddballs for the county, right? Most of the county is zoned either forestry or agricultural. So what surrounds these parcels is agricultural. So we felt like that would be compatible zoning. But when you start talking about properties along the eastern corridor or any of the places where the town's plans call for mixed use development, I think agricultural presents the least risk in a sort of conflict between our zoning and your long range plans.
I have a question. Okay, so when I was looking at this, and I have, for example, I think one of the parcels is the Luconin property, and that's in the plan of, so we, whoever they, and I think you've understood, there's interest for them to maybe to join the town, at least annex to the town, at least, because we're currently there in the county, right? That's my understanding. And we've got all these part of the parcel is to go into the town. So that county doesn't have, or doesn't have that zoning or doesn't want that zoning. But yeah, that would make them want to connect to the town. And they've expressed interest, so they can maybe develop it, have a more intensive use. Especially if they annex the town could also get. But then the town would then have the burden of, well, extending utilities and things like that to accommodate if they had a zoning request. Do you see?
I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but maybe I can speak to the annexation.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, exactly, let's talk about that, that's really, yeah, thank you. Yeah, because I see why, I'm kind of glad that the counties around the country don't, and that's why you have such significant urban sprawl, and they don't protect land, and we don't, right?
Boulder County is, you know, in the partnerships that we've had with the town over the years through our IGAs, has resulted in it being a very special place that I think really love. And a lot of it is that work that we've done to drive urban development to places where our Boulder County Comprehensive Plan says they are appropriate, which are the towns that have the ability to provide a full range of urban services and supports to that development. So circling back around to annexation, the change of zoning in the county doesn't compel annexation for anybody. It doesn't, so it doesn't compel a property owner to request it, and it doesn't compel the town to approve it. It really lays out sort of what is the future of these properties while they remain in unincorporated Boulder County. So if Lucanen or really any of the other, I think there's a total of 20 parcels, it would really be the same question. If any of those properties came to the town to petition for annexation, that's when the town and that property owner would have discussions about, well, how do utilities get out there and what's the right zoning and all those sorts of questions.
Does this, I couldn't quite tell from the materials, does this restrict future rezoning of these properties to something else within the county? So if they're broadly brushed as agriculture, could individual property owners come back to the county and request zoning that's not agriculture, one by one?
The county land use code does have a process for individual property owners to apply to rezone their property. It's not common, and
Yeah.
right, and I don't know sort of how realistic that would be, given that we just did this change of zoning.
Is that being then considered spot zoning then, or?
Potentially,
Yeah, which is.
usually, rezoning to the benefit of one single individual property owner, sort of without a community benefit.
Well, the reason I ask is it seems like you're saying that this doesn't compel annexation, but it seems like, you know, if I put myself in the shoes of these owners, which isn't hard to do because there are letters written from their point of view, you know, this is restricting what their property can do, and it's effectively making it less valuable from one point of view. And so I would just be concerned that there would be I don't know, some issues with property owners taking agricultural zoning willingly and maybe not trying to fight it. And I don't know if the town alliance necessarily, I don't speak for the town alliance, just one member of it, but I don't know if we want to be engaged in, you know, someone trying to recoup the value of their property by being annexed or rezoned, is what that means to us. So I don't have that question necessarily. I'm just trying to understand if there's anything in here that says they can't be spot zoned or rezoned later in the future. Especially if, you know, they hired a lawyer that said our property was zoned this a few months ago and now it's this now. That would be an interesting argument. Barney, your hands up a second ago. Do you still want to have it up?
But yeah, I'm trying to do the same thing, which is try to think through the sequence of events, if you will. The town of Lyons actually was careful to zone the property that it acquired at the water treatment plant as agricultural once it was annexed, because it was thought that was that any developer would come in and propose the zone that would be consistent with the development. And it probably would not be agricultural. Now I'm trying to think from the other perspective of, and actually, there's a little bit of feedback. It would have been helpful if when the moratorium was declared, that the purpose of it was made clear, because we were very confused about that. We speculated, we were uncertain. But had we known that the purpose of it was to support the notion that those closed properties should be brought under the influence of the municipality because of the reasons that Andy was talking about a little bit earlier, that there is a structure to deal with it in the close focus. And I think had we known that, it might have been a little bit helpful for us to be, you know, having gotten our heads around this more quickly. But if what happens is these properties are moved to agricultural, and it gives them a bit of an incentive to be willing to be annexed to the town. In other words, be incented to be annexed by the town. The town then can accommodate whatever their need is, as long as it makes sense for the town. So if any of those properties would be willing to request annexation, they would likely request annexation with the thought, at least, that they're going in some direction. Either there's a developer who's interested in it, or they want to develop it themselves, or they want to protect their property by specific zoning that the town could provide. So all of those are possibilities. I think it does get a little bit into the potential that a property owner could feel like they're being pushed. And so you could see some potential for discomfort in certain circumstances. I'm wondering if there's anything that can be done to mitigate that, to provide assurances that a property owner is unlikely in the end to be disadvantaged substantially. I'm not sure what that would be. And again, I think we're going to have brief time to try to understand this in detail. But does that kind of describe what the process that sort of seems to be set up?
Does, and to add to that, you know, these are our neighbors.
Yeah.
Town or planning area encompasses a lot of folks who use our town or Lyons people, even though they don't reside within the town limits. But I think it's worth considering their point of view. Commissioner Graham, you patient?
Yeah, and you mentioned that the county wants to encourage development basically in the nodes or the towns where there are a full range of services. So by that, do you mean that Lyons is one of those towns, a place where the county supports us to grow? Or are you saying we're not, and that the county wants to steer development to within Longmont and Boulder and elsewhere?
Alliance is definitely an urban service provider,
Okay,
so,
okay,
you know, and historically, how Alliance grows and, you know, how Alliance and town work together have been documented through our intergovernmental agreements. So there's layers to all of this.
I
Yeah,
guess my follow-up question, or Andrew, did you want to say something first?
no, it's just, again, and reading through the staff report, you know, it seems clear that is a major goal here, is to make sure that urbanization, where it's going to happen, is happening under the town's purview, and that it's not happening out in the county. So at least that's what I've gotten out of a lot of these conversations, you know, recently is that this is the county trying to not push development because it's there, but guide development of those properties so they go somewhere where there are urban services.
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Yeah, sure.
And maybe since you're brand new, you don't know yet. In the referral process to propose developments within the county, within our 3-mile plan, how much influence do we have, in your opinion, when those things come about? Meaning if these things were zoned in a way that's copacetic with line zoning, but weren't annexed into the town of Lyons, but instead we're in the county, would we have any influence over the development in a way that would be beneficial to us instead of annexation?
I have not referred or received a referral as of yet. Again, I think there is a partnership and kind of a unified, this is where, you know, Lyons is needs to grow and in some places to fill a few gaps. And I think this is a way, you know, to help the county to help, you know, guide that growth, you know, because again, you know, need to be very clear, the town of Lyons and Boulder County have their own legislative processes. They have, you know, they're not in, you know, the same people aren't idle to that process, but I do think most referral processes, you know, I think there is value. I certainly, you know, if a referral comes from the county, you know, that referral, you know, will be taken seriously, and I would expect reciprocity, but, you know, and I'm sure it has happened. But I can't answer that question because I haven't thought.
No problem.
I would suspect that a yes, it would matter.
So do you two feel like what's being proposed here is the best way to achieve Lyons' goals of developing where we'd like to develop? And I understand there's the county goal too, which, you know, may be different.
Yeah, so I think again, kind of the scenario where currently under commercial zoning, you know, we have plans. We can't pick out one parcel versus another, you know, that's not why we're here. But, you know, if we have an area where we kind of have a plan, or, you know, we have an idea of how we want that to grow, and the comp plan speaks to this area growing. If there's a use that can be established in the county under commercial zoning or even transitional zoning that's in conflict with the town's plan, then that is a worry, you know, and that's where this doesn't hurt the town. You know, it's, you know, whether it's good or bad for the property owners, I don't, you know, I guess perspective out of planning is, yes, we need to address those concerns and figure them out. But, you know, the long range development and what a negative, you know, repercussion of one of these properties developing in the county and again, serving as a whole and in a plan area, I think that is worth considering. I see, have you all ever seen the children's movie Up? You know,
Those balloons.
the little house. Oh, I love it, but you know, it's a Pixar movie. You have the little house, right? And then you have, you know, all the development right there. In that case, and it's based off a true story, I
Yeah,
think.
like,
but-
yeah.
In that case, it was a negative thing. They were pushing this individual out. But you take the context of the movie out and put in, you know, a mixed use district, connected sidewalks. You know, we have all this urban infrastructure built, and then you have a use that wasn't intended, that was developed in the county, that didn't have sidewalk requirements, didn't have any aesthetic criteria, didn't have any of this. And I think that's, you know, at least what the conclusion I come to is that, you know, that is a valid reason for the rezone, at least through a long range perspective. How it shakes out in current day, you know, is tough. That's a decision for, you know.
Looks like we have a question on Zoom. Commissioner Hammer.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, I did watch the Boulder County Planning Commission's last week, and I agreed with most everything they brought up and where they ended up in their amendments. And so I just wanted to go on record that I do think it's important that the commercial properties not be downzoned. For instance, there was a gentleman that spoke that, you know, he has his life savings in the property and felt like even though if it got rezoned to ag and it was legal non-conforming, I do think it would impact property valuations, and he felt like that would impact his retirement and all that. So anyway, I don't think it's fair to downzone those properties, and so but that's what I believe the Boulder County Planning Commission put in their amendment. And I would like it's too bad. I'm glad to hear there was 3 outreaches to the property owners. Hopefully more will engage in the process because I understand some of them did not. So I don't know if a 4th time is, if it's too late to do that. But anyway, just wanted to state that I felt like the Boulder County planners were got to the right point, and I think that's at least my view is what this is headed in the right direction. I will state too, I think the whole annexation discussion is just kind of premature. I think this is a rezoning discussion for the county. I think, you know, annexation is a whole different discussion in my mind, and different criteria for each property.
Was there a specific development plan or something that triggered this moratorium? Because it seemed to just come out of nowhere. We didn't, suddenly we saw this moratorium. I wondered if it was a way to stop something from happening that Boulder County didn't want to have.
No, nothing specific. And to be honest, I think moratoriums typically are surprises to folks because their intent is really to say, you know, we don't want to be processing applications for uses that we might not want to allow in these areas anymore. So if you kind of tell everybody that you're going to do a moratorium, then it opens the door for people to submit applications for things that maybe you really don't want there in the long run. So it's not unusual that a moratorium is a bit of a surprise. But I don't think there was a single precipitating application or property. You know, I think staff report kind of covers the various reasons why this came about. You know, the county adopted a hazard mitigation plan in 2022. I think we're all aware of why that is necessary. We were in early discussions, IGA discussions, and I had been watching sort of and following along on the lines, comprehensive plan update. You know, annexations over time here have created some more potential for, there's more contiguity for some of these parcels, and as new parcels come in, contiguity sort of can be extended. So I wouldn't say there was any one thing.
Is there
Are there other rezonings? I mean, I guess the answer is no, you kind of already answered it, but just to ask specifically, are there other rezonings happening with other municipalities besides Alliance, Boulder County?
We have a draft intergovernmental agreement with the town of Longmont that has going to second reading tomorrow, I believe, so their city council is talking about it. And a similar idea is in that IGA, to look at the county zoning. In Longmont, a lot of those at this point in time, they're enclave zoning. And it, very similar to the town alliance, much of that zoning goes back quite a ways. And the town is grown up and around those properties and might have a future vision for those going forward. So.
Mayor Pro Tem, Beryl, your hand was up.
Yes, I was kind of curious because I watched the meeting last week as well. And it did talk about transitional zoning versus commercial, comparing it to ag. And I was just wondering, what are the different uses? Can we discuss the uses for ag versus the uses in transition and the uses in commercial?
So that would probably take us a pretty long time. I don't have that comparison. The easiest way for me for you to do this is to take a look at the use tables in the land use code. And sort of do the comparison sort of use by use. I don't think I'm taking
Okay. The reason I think it is an important question that probably should be considered is that, from what I understand, the impression is that in ag, there can still be a lot of industrial waste that can be put onto a piece of property. And so I found rather concerning. And I didn't know if that was the case though for commercial or transitional. Because of the fact that that port sees a lot of traffic, it is close to the river. And if that is a use that can be permitted, that we don't necessarily.
We don't have industrial waste as a specific usage. What use you're concerned about?
Industrial as a conditional use, and
Let's see.
if it's not appropriate to do this right now, we can always have our staff follow up.
Yeah, and if it would help, I can pull those three. I can make a spreadsheet pretty quickly using those, just pulling out the information from just those three sub-districts. And we'll do that to profile. It'll be provided, of course, with the Board of Trustees, but I'll copy you all on it for the context as well.
I was gonna say, since it came from our Mayor Pro Tem anyway, I think it gives something staff provides to the board.
Thank you.
Right, is that all? Leslie?
For me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Graham?
Planner Brolin, can you remind me / us what we wanted this map to look like? And I apologize, this process, I've just had a hard time kind of grasping it all, but I assume we came to the county with, some kind of plan or request. What did that look like compared to this?
So I think you may be mistaking the IGA discussions.
I may be,
Okay, which we're not discussing tonight.
yeah.
As far as what we never had, we understood there was a much moratorium and there was gonna be a reason, but I don't think that the town ever provided a map of what parcels should be rezoned. So I don't think that ever.
Okay, so this is actually new tonight. Okay.
First time I heard that.
Okay, that's comforting, because I feel like I should have understood this better than but Okay.
Not going on,
Yeah,
it's
so-
not related.
So again,
Yeah.
to be clear, this is a county process and, their zone district. So, it's important that the town is involved and that's why we're getting into it and we're gonna provide these recommendations. But
Okay,
as far as, there's not really a negotiation because this is the town zoning map. So. And that's not,
the county.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
this is the county's,
sense.
yeah,
Okay,
this
so
is the
you
county zoning.
you produced this map in the interim. You're sharing it with us now. There hasn't been a negotiation.
That's correct.
We set forth what we'd like to see.
Except as you've already expressed in your long range, in your plan. Okay.
But some agricultural or conflict, no,
Right, and
that's the
the,
rub.
but agriculture, if these properties were annexed, I'm presuming they're unlikely to be annexed as agricultural zoning, but that's again for the town to decide
Right,
if and when that
Right.
happens.
just to be clear, we're not compelling annexation with this.
No.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Chair, you were once chair, you will always be chair to me.
No, no longer chair. I'm just curious what has CEMEX provided any feedback to you, to Boulder County? And or what do you think the impact to them may be?
They weren't a property owner that responded to any of our mailings. And what was the second part of that?
I was just curious what, I would think they would have responded and had some definitely had some input. So I'm kind of surprised why they been radio silent. And then I'm just trying to understand what the long term looks like for CEMEX if it gets rezoned to ag.
I couldn't really even guess.
Just
What CMX's plans are for the future.
Yeah, and this doesn't preclude, so the use runs with the property. So if CMEX wanted to convey the property to another company that wanted to use the use in the same way that it has, there's nothing about this zone change that would preclude, that swap of hands.
understood. Yeah. It does potentially devalue the property, I would think, but that's why I think they would have something to say.
When the town of Lyons was considering acquisition of the water treatment plant on 66, the presumption was that if it came into the town, the property value would increase. That was strongly the presumption, and as a matter of fact, the town did okay with the subsequent sale, and in addition to the use of that property for public works building. So that turned out to be an okay assumption, and the subsequent actions worked out well for the town. So, and again, with respect to Commissioner Hamrick's comment about annexation, I think it does play a role in our considerations here, because it does it has an influence on the owner's perception of the impact on them, because they'll consider, they would consider either annexing and benefiting from that potential increase in the value, because the town of Lyons could adjust the zoning in various ways that could benefit the property owner. And more likely be able to effectuate that. However, a property owner could be resistant to that, or for whatever personal reasons they have, not want to be pressured in that, or pushed in that way. Let's say pressured. pushed or slightly incented in that direction. And would prefer to remain in effect independent, with their existing, no change situation.
What does the recommendation look like from this commission?
Yes, I struggle with that. It's just me being open. So, hearing especially Commissioner Hamrick, I think there's value and, if the planning commission wants to uphold the PCDC, just so we don't get planning commission mixed up. If the PCDC wants to uphold, the county planning commission's motion, and that ensures, that the property owners or, the properties that were in question that voiced their true worries about this process. I think that's certainly appropriate for, this commission to do, and again, decreased property value devaluation. That's a couple, sorry. But devaluation of property aside, through a long range perspective of if these properties do change hands, and the use changes down the road, it is my perspective that downzoning them to, ag, it's not hurting the current use. So it will be established, if it is legally conforming use within that district. It will be established as a legally non-conforming use. And it can maintain that way in perpetuity. There's nothing saying that it can't operate in the same manner. Unless the county makes a text amendment in the future, but it would still likely be a non-conforming use. So it's hard, I see kind of two avenues. It's either, go with staff's original interpretation of how this benefits the town and supports our long range goals, which I can see the validity in. But then I also see the concern that it could be, it could be harmful, to a handful of property owners. So I guess that's kind of up to you all. Those are the two options, and I think that, they both are valid.
And then what I think the next step should be is a motion of some sort, and then we can discuss, but I want to make sure that the commission has had ample opportunity to ask questions of county and town staff. Commissioner Kerr.
So when they get rezoned at sale or immediately rezoned and they're non-conforming legal, is that good?
Yeah, so it would be one, I don't know the county's process for sure, but it would be once the Board of County Commissioners approve the map amendment, then it would go effect some days later. And then, yes, it's right away. It's not when they're sold.
It's only if they try to sell, they're devalued then, because ag is probably maybe less valuable than their currency.
I think it's when they choose to develop further. Is that fair from the county's perspective? It's not like a sale of property would have to be rezoned. It would be a change in use or a development that triggers some sort of review that would require. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about property valuation. I think there's a lot of different ways to look at that. So I really am not equipped to speak to how an individual property might, be more valued by having contiguity to the town or have a different zoning. What is true is that changing the zoning changes the options for future uses for these properties. The agricultural zone district has a variety of uses that are allowed in it. So it's really hard to say the uses that are legally non-conforming can continue. So for most property, you know, the church is one where it's a use allowed in the current zone district, it's a use allowed in the residential zone district. So not all properties be conforming. So there's some variation amongst the properties. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, okay. I know that some of the, from what I heard, some of the property owners were not happy about this. So I was just trying to understand. Because they felt like their life savings, their property were being devalued.
So if I can just ask the question one more time to the county in a more specific way, it's obviously a change of use would require that it would only be, the use would only be allowed by zoning, the new zone. Right, so if these properties were rezoned to agriculture, and then the owners of that property, either the current owner or some future owner wanted to change the use would have to be allowed in some capacity through that new zone.
Yes.
So this new zoning agriculture is generally more limited to commercial uses than current zoning of many of the properties. So that's not a question, sorry, say that out loud. But what I don't understand is I don't know the county's land use code well enough, but there's oftentimes a substantial improvement to a property of some sort. Like for instance, in Lyons, the one that comes to mind is in our floodplain. You know, if you improve a home in the floodplain by more than 50%, it's substantially improved, and it has to go through a number of things to make it compliant with our floodway or flood zone. And my question is, if there's a current non-conforming use of commercial on what will in the future be an agricultural property, could that commercial non-conforming use be improved to its maximum potential without meeting the requirements of agricultural zoning in the future? Does that make sense?
I think I
Should
understand.
we do a 3-story commercial building instead of a 1-story commercial
No.
building?
So the non-conforming use, kind of loses its non-conforming status if it expands beyond its established level or not committee.
Oh, sorry, yes, Commissioner Grant.
So maybe this was set, but so Hannah, are you looking from us? Is this like an FYI tonight, just like explaining this to us, this is kind of what it's gonna be? Or is the county looking for feedback and like input from the town?
I'm gonna let Andrew speak to your processes.
Yeah, so tonight, the agenda item is that you all will provide the Board of Trustees a recommendation of their recommendation. So, the Board of Trustees will be making, it won't be in the staff packet, but some days before the board or the county board of commissioners, they will have a formal referral from the Board of Trustees about this reason. So the process of tonight is to have Hannah and I here to kind of lead this discussion, but with the expectation that you all will prepare, or if you're not ready to, I don't know what that process looks like, but prepare at least a draft recommendation to the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, so we need a motion.
Yeah, I'm prepared. And it's a motion in order to initiate discussion of the motion and welcoming all modifications or amendments to it. I move that the Planning and Community Development Commission of Lyons support the rezoning plan, the Boulder County rezoning plan, with the proviso that reasonable efforts are taken to prevent harm to property owners affected by the plan.
Okay, now we may discuss as a commission internally.
Well, we get a second.
Oh, I'm sorry,
It
yes.
could die.
Second, apologies. I'm new chair, I'm so lucky. Is there a second?
I think so, yeah, because you're to limit harm. Limit harm.
Oh, accept it.
Yeah,
So before we vote, we can discuss. And that's the whole point of making the motion. Yes, please, Commissioner Graham.
Would it make more sense to have a motion to not accept this yet, but rather to take time to like figure out what we want and how we want to respond? And I say that not knowing like how much real influence we have, how much it really matters, because I'm still trying to grasp all that. So I'm totally open to that being shut down.
Well, no, we could not recommend because we do not understand, right? We could recommend, that staff do X, Y, Z before the board of trustees has it without fully understanding. Like, we can admit our own lack of information in the motion if we want.
That's where I am personally. If I am the only one in that vote.
No, it's confusing, but we're not creating, sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
We're not creating a motion beyond recommending or not recommending. So we're either recommending because of this, this, and this, or we're not recommending because of this, this, and this. That's what we're doing tonight. We don't even have to have a this, this, and this. We could just recommend.
I might propose not recommending supporting this yet, to have more time to digest it and to hear from staff to what they would recommend.
I believe staff can be a part of this as the secretary of the commission.
Yeah, so at least the motion on the floor prior to your friendly amendment, I want to make it again clear that the recommendation doesn't need to come from the PCDC. You all are recommending that the Board of Trustees recommend. I just don't want to put that pressure on you all. So,
To support it.
okay.
Which would be the recommendation.
Sure.
To the board of trustees.
So again, you know, as far as process goes, there's no pressure on this commission to make a decision, but the ball is rolling, and it's not our legislative process. So we, again, yeah, I think the Board of County Commissioners will certainly take the Board of Trustees, testimony, at the meeting, and, whatever letter we present. And I think they'll take that as part of their process. But I don't know, I don't mean this in a bad way, but I don't know if we have time, to say for staff to explore more options, and, so that's just keep that in mind. And I think we have the understanding of, and if I need to convey that better, I sure will, however long it takes. But I think we have the information, except for how it's going to affect those, 3 or 4 property owners. And that's something we don't have. Commissioner.
So the Boulder County Commission, they recommended that the following additions be made: properties that are currently zoned commercial and or traditional that have commercial activity on them be reconsidered for zoning designation separate from agriculture. That the intent otherwise Boulder County is that first one kind of what you're getting at with your
So this is,
currently
the copy pasted.
Yeah,
Which one? Okay, what's that?
it's the very, if you scroll down to the very bottom, page 3.
that's.
I mean, that seems, it doesn't designate a zone, but it seems like what you're trying to put forward with your motion.
Is just that whole document, the analysis and the understanding of what's happening with each of the individual properties is something that can be supported, because what it does is achieve an objective of the county, which is to help with municipalities' ability to be available for municipal services, if you will, for those areas when next steps occur. So supporting that, because I thought the overall thing is well thought through, good analysis, But there's the potential of harm, or what it appears to be harm, to certain very specific properties, and that should be limited, which is the term. And I don't know if limited is the best word, but that's the current motion that's on the floor.
Barney, so if I'm understanding you, you're basically saying that what the county's put forth will, it's obviously the county's goals, but it would also enable us to achieve our goals. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't see it
Okay,
diminishing any of the town's goals or
Okay.
objectives. In fact, it could have a beneficial impact.
okay.
I agree, I think it's beneficial to the town, but it's not very nice to those people who.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a nice, that's the way to put it.
My guess is that some of the properties, I don't know how many exactly, some of the properties are probably okay with it.
Yeah.
But if a property owner can demonstrate that it will do harm to them, I think that needs to be taken into consideration by the county.
Mhm. Okay, thank you for explaining, that's helpful. I'm on board.
And sorry, I don't think there's manipulation. I think it's just that this is in the county's comp plan, and it also, somewhat jives with our comp plan. And it's, there are a handful of properties that it has a true effect to. And again, those were kind of the two motions that I had presented. But I think that you all have came to the conclusion that the planning commission of the county also came to us that more analysis or something needs to be done to make sure that we're not harming, individual property owners. That's the last thing I said.
Second. So this is, again, discussion for the motion that was put forth and seconded, which is to, approve of the recommendation already set forth to the Board of Trustees to consider approving the recommendation set forth.
So is there a timetable? In other words, for example, could we table the motion to the next meeting without causing difficulty for the county? Or for the Board of Trustees? The Board of Trustees first amendment.
The Board of Trustees will be hearing this at their next meeting next week. And then with the hearing is on the 17th. The 7th. So yeah, I mean, if this commission wants staff, I think if there's hesitation that, that the ball is kind of out of, I can work with county staff as much as possible to fill any gaps. Again, if there's information that needs to be provided, I guess that motion would look like, this, the PCDC would like this, and this to be presented to the Board of Trustees prior to their, discussion of the topic.
I don't know what it would be that isn't already outlined in this report, but I do think your motion has at least an emphasis on the weakness that's already part of the recommendation, is that those landowners are considered. So I don't know. Is there any more discussion for this question?
Barney, what were you thinking the reason to table it would be?
If we had time, we have plenty of time, then, it wouldn't hurt anything to wait till the next meeting,
We don't. This is the only chance the PCDC has to weigh in on this. We could table it and we won't get a chance to weigh in on it.
Do we need to wait?
That's a fair question as well. I don't.
Well, I personally think that as a PCDC, this is something that affects future.
Yes.
And, it's land use, and that's really the foundation of the PCDC's charge, if you will. And so I think, by putting a condition on it, which is that that they literally limit. And there may be a stronger word than limit, and I would actually give the planner the right to adjust that word to make it as strong as we can make it. I'm just not smart enough to figure out the word right now, but to mitigate, to prevent, or to minimize, or whatever harm to the property owners that that would be using Commissioner Hamrick's word, downzoned.
Minimize might do, minimize harm, that'd be the right word, yeah. Minimize harm, because touch is completely prevent, that's why I don't like prevent that. But, yeah. Something.
I want to set clear expectations for county staff as well. And what is that to this, and I don't want to open up a whole nother, conversation, but what is that? Does that mean more engagement with property owners? Does that mean speaking with real estate attorneys about how, and what is that expectation of what does minimize mean?
What it means is if somebody can demonstrate, that this is at least what's going through my mind, if somebody can demonstrate that literally they have no reasonable means of maintaining and continuing to enhance the property with their value, then they should be given some opportunity, whether it's maintaining their current zoning, being assigned a zoning that would enable them to achieve those goals. The county should, in my mind, must consider that and take action to cause that harm to not occur. And now, it may not get down to there's zero difference, but if it's like $500 difference or something, then it's like.
And Barney, are you referring to their current use? Is that right?
Yeah.
As opposed to at the time of sale?
Well, it would be if they're limited to their current use forever, and they literally can describe a circumstance in which they attempted to gain value out of their current property, but they can't. It's
Because the zone has changed.
We want that to not happen.
Yeah, agreed. But at the time of sale, we don't necessarily, I think, want the county to have to make up that difference or like grant a different zoning.
No,
So this is just for the current use.
it would be for the zoning assignment. It wouldn't be about the use at all. It would be about the zone assignment. So if the property owner says, I'm fine with just keeping the current zone that would be, to me, a way of minimizing the impact. Or, for example, if there were another zone, like a transitional zone that says, almost all of the things that they could reasonably want to do with their property would be fine, and it doesn't appear like it would affect their values at all. That would be minimized also. But if it said, well, it keeps your current use, that's already there. That's already part of the proposal because of the legal non-conformity.
Yeah, but again, it needs to be stated that the amount of non-conformity is allowed, but no more. So, I don't know exactly what that would even mean. Like, give a business with 6 overhead lights and 7th, is that more non-conforming?
Well, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying is if that's where it ended up, I don't think the county ought to do that. The county ought to say, oh, we recognize that we're putting you in harm's way, in fact, financially in harm's way. So we're not going to shift you to ag. We're going to shift you to something that doesn't, that's where.
I think it was expressed, oh, sorry.
And that's what one of these additions is. says properties that are currently zoned commercial or transition that have commercial activity on them be reconsidered for a zoning designation separate from agriculture. So I think that's, it's already mentioned, I think, as a division. So maybe,
Well, the reason, part of the reason I framed the motion as a bid, and I don't want to get heavily into defending it, but it's more, we're sending a message to a lot of people by the way we say what we say. And one of the messages I think we should send is that we do want to protect our neighbors, as we're saying. And if there's a better way of saying it, I'm all for it. But, you know, in any event, because there are those who believe that this is an effort to cause financial harm to certain properties, people think it's intentional to say, no, we're standing on the side of, we don't.
For discussion around the motion. Would it be possible to have the motion reread? So, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if you could restate the motion, if you can. It's important that you be able to, for the minutes.
Yeah, I understand, but it has changed a few times, so. Okay, good. So at least to me, where we landed was, okay, so we started with, my apologies.
Restate it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Planning and Community Development Commission for the Town of Lyons supports or recommends that the Board of Trustees support the rezoning plan of Boulder County with the proviso that all reasonable efforts be taken to minimize harm, financial harm or other harm to property owners affected. And I'll add to that as a note that the town attorney or the planner can modify the wording to make it more understandable, as long as it's within the spirit of the motion.
Okay, so motion put forth and seconded is that PCDC recommends the Board of Trustees support the county's planning commission's rezoning plan with the provision that all reasonable efforts be made to limit harm to current property owners. Does that sound acceptable? Okay, I think we're at the point where we are voting. Unless there's any last discussion, I assume not. No. Okay, put in your votes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thanks.
Or something you had to do about that.
Next item on the agenda is staff report, which there is none. So I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
We have to raise our hands.
Raise your hand if you.
Good.